things. Amen? Amen. You may be seated, and our children 4 years through 6th grade can be dismissed to go back to KWC Junior with Miss Priscilla. You guys have a lot of fun back there and learn more about Jesus, and we'll look forward to seeing you after service. So I shared a little video before service. Some of you saw it, maybe some of you didn't. 6 killer tips for marriage, and that just, it inspired me as we continue our series, Old School, looking at the book of Proverbs. Solomon's got 5 things, okay? So I've shared this before. I thought it was really good and helpful, and I thought I'd share it again. 5 easy steps to wreck your marriage, okay? 5 easy steps to wreck your marriage kind of goes along with the 6 killer tips that Johnny and Chachi gave us in the video earlier. I think I can take their 6 tips and take it to a whole nother level. So if you want to wreck your marriage, here's 5 easy steps. And here's the thing, you don't even have to do all 5 of these. And you don't even have to do them in order. If you want to wreck your marriage, here's number 1, nag. Say it with me, nag. Continually find fault with the other person. Never tell them what they've done right. Always tell them what they've done wrong. Help them out again and again and again. Tell them how to drive. The husbands especially like that. So wives, help them out. Tell them how to drive. Tell them they don't know how to drive, that they can't do anything right. Anything and everything that they say, don't listen to, and you tell them what's up, right? And when you start to know that you're getting under their skin, keep going. So nag. And in other words, to make it simple, women especially, be a Karen, okay? You know what that is, right? Nag, okay? Find fault. Use your outside voice inside, okay? Nag. Got it? Number 1. Okay, and that's not just women for women. Men can do it too, but here's some verses. A quarrelsome wife is like a constant dripping on a rainy day. Restraining her is like restraining the wind or grasping oil with the hand. Like, oh, man. And then this is what he says in chapter 21, verse 9. Better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. I like this one. Better to live in a desert. Like, go to the hottest place on earth where there's no water. That would be better than to live with a quarrelsome wife, quarrelsome and nagging wife. Or this, it's to a man's honor to avoid strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. It's not just women that have this down. Guys can do it too. And so if you want to wreck your marriage, nag. You just look for any and every reason to complain, to argue, to fight. Nag. Number 2, take one another for granted. Take one another for granted. Never say thank you. Never say I love you. Never show your appreciation for their hard work. Gentlemen, never, ever buy them something just because. You know who buys something for their wife just because? Somebody that's done something stupid. And you don't want other people thinking you did something stupid, so never ever buy your bride something just because. If you want to wreck your marriage, take one another for granted. How about this one? Number 3, eat honey from another hive. When someone that's not your spouse says something really sweet and they just gush, kind of in a flirtatious way, you just eat that up. You deserve it, okay? If you want to wreck your marriage, eat honey from another hive. This is what Proverbs chapter 5, verses 3 through 4 says. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil, but in the end she is bitter and a gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. But if you want to wreck your marriage, you eat honey from another hive. Number 4, if you want to wreck your marriage, go where the homewreckers are. If you want to wreck your marriage, just go where the homewreckers are. You don't have to wait for them to find you. You go where they are. You know where the kind of the street corners are, right? Now in Kingston, we don't have street corners. Like those kind of street corners, you know what I'm saying? But you can find home wreckers if you look hard enough. And here's the thing, you don't even have to find somebody, male or female, that is a home wrecker. You don't even have to have a relationship with them at work. You can find them on the big screen or the small screen. You can find them in a magazine or you can find them in a book. But you go where the home wreckers are if you want to wreck your marriage. Last but not least. Oh, actually, I've got a verse for that one. Let me share this verse with you. At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple. I noticed among the young men a youth who had no sense. He had what? No sense. What does that mean? He's dumb. He's, a more polite way, he's naive. Okay? He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in. So if you want to wreck your marriage, you go to where the home wreckers are. And last but not least, be overconfident. Be overconfident. If you want to wreck your marriage, be overconfident. You believe and you tell yourself, we'll never, ever fail. We'll never have problems. This won't happen in our marriage. I would never do that. If you want to wreck your marriage, you just say, this will never happen to us. That'll never happen to us. That'll never happen to us. If you want to wreck your marriage, be overconfident. 5, I told you, 5, are those easy steps? I mean, come on, anybody can do those 5 easy steps. Proverbs 7:26 says this, many are the victims she has brought down, her slain are a mighty throng. How many of you think that those many thought that they would never be brought down? Probably most of them, if not all of them, right? But if you want to wreck your marriage, be overconfident. Now, some of you are going like, Pastor Len, all right, have you lost your mind? Like 5 easy steps to wreck your marriage? And like, obviously, we could just turn those around, right? Let me help you do that, though. And we'll take a little deeper dive into the book of Proverbs and get some wisdom for marriage. And so instead of nag, let me help you out with this one. Speak softly and carry a big blanket. Speak softly and carry a big blanket. And some of you are thinking Teddy Roosevelt, and you wanted to write in, carry a big stick. And that would not be the right answer. Let me help you out with the book of Proverbs, okay? So first one, Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft word turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And so we're going to talk about speaking softly. Well, what does that mean? It's talking about our tone, but not just our tone, right? Not just our tone. It's important to use the right tone, but it's also important to use the right words and to have the right timing. There's a time to address things and a way to address things. And here's the thing. If you want what you are saying to be received well, you need to package it well. I'm going to say that again. If you want what you're trying to say to your spouse to be received well, you need to make sure that you're packaging it well. How will this person likely respond if I say this? If I say it like this? Is this going to put them in a defensive posture? Is this more likely to help them to understand what I'm saying and what I'm not saying? We need to make sure that we're thinking about what we're saying before we say it. It ties into what we talked about last week, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. But speak softly and carry a big blanket. Here's where carry a big blanket comes from. Proverbs 10, verse 12. Hatred stirs up dissension, but love covers over all wrongs. So we're going to speak softly and carry a big blanket. Now, this isn't sweeping things under the rug. This isn't pretending like you weren't hurt, like what they said or what they did didn't bother you. But this is extending forgiveness. It's covered. We're not bringing that back up. We're not getting historical on things. We're not talking about, in 1973, you did this. Like, I don't even remember a week ago. Well, that's your problem. A big blanket. Big blanket. The marriages that last the longest are those that learn how to speak softly and carry a big blanket. They know how to cover over wrongs. Again, it's not saying that sin is acceptable. It's not saying that it's no big deal. It's not saying that it's okay to abuse one another. But we do learn how to forgive, and we do learn how to not get historical on things or hysterical on things, and we learn how to speak softly and carry a big blanket. Number 2, instead of taking one another for granted, we crown them. We crown them. Here's a couple verses. Proverbs 12:4. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is like rottenness to the bones. So let me kind of break this down a little bit. Wives, you have the opportunity to place like a king's crown on your husband by not just how you treat them, but how you live your life. How you live your life. Is your life a life of honor and respect, something that sheds a good light on your husband? Or does the way you live your life shine a negative light on your husband, and it is like rottenness to the bones? And here's the biggest thing that I think is important for both wives and husbands to keep in mind. One of the most important things is how we speak about the other one to others. How we talk about our wives. How we talk about our husband. That is one of the most important things. You're either putting a crown on them, or you're like rottenness to the bones. And this goes both ways. Here it's talking about a wife, but I think we could easily swap this out and not take things out of context. Put a crown on them. Scripture says, Proverbs 18:22, he who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. And I think it is important, and I think it is needed for Christians to lead the way in what it looks like to have godly, healthy marriages where we show and demonstrate, not just by what we say, but how we live, how we treat one another, that it is good to find a wife. That wives are to be cherished. Wives are to be treated in many respects like a queen, like they are our queen. And so husbands, how are we looking at, how are we taking care of our brides? And I think it goes both ways. And so number 2, we crown them. Genesis 2:18 says, it's not good for man to be alone. Wives are a good thing. They're a gift from the Lord. But wives, make sure that you are a gift. That your life and the way that you treat your husband, the way that you talk about your husband, honors them and is a way of putting a crown on their head. Number 3. We talk about if you want to wreck your marriage, eat honey from another hive. Well, if you want to have a healthy marriage, give them some honey. Now, there are different ways to approach this, and Proverbs 5:18 through 20 helps us out. I'm going to read verse 18. I'm not going to read verse 19 and 20. I'll let you read that on your own, but give them some honey. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. And then Solomon gives a little extra encouragement about giving them some honey. But let me just make sure that we understand, giving them some honey is not just that kind of a way, but we saw earlier that there are those that honey just drips from their mouth like they gush over somebody, right? One of the things that troubles me is that it seems like, and we see this in even Christian fiction books, where there's the lead up, and there's flirting and fun in a relationship between a man and a woman, but then they get married, and that's the end of the book. And that's when the romancing should just be beginning, in learning how to date and really encourage and flirt with one another, and not just flirt, but tell them how awesome they are. Not just trying to sweeten them up, but being sweet to them and how we speak to them. Give them some honey. Tell them how good they are. It overlaps with some of the other things that we've already talked about, not taking them for granted, or making sure that we're crowning them. But may your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. Good stuff. Let me again encourage you, Proverbs 5:19 and 20. Number 5. Use bumper. Or number 4. The four looks like a 5 in this font. Number 4. Some of you are like, you skipped one. Number 4. Use bumpers. Use bumpers. How many of you have gone bowling before? How many of you threw the bowling ball in the gutter? How many of you know that that's not the object of the game? How many of you found that life was better, bowling was better when you used bumpers, right? Here's the thing. Life is better when we use bumpers. Life is better when you're not in the gutter. And there are so many different ways that we can end up in the gutter relationally and in marriage. And I have found that there is great wisdom in using bumpers, establishing bumpers in our life. Help us to not go into the gutter, things that keep us from going where we shouldn't go, right? Because it's so easy to be those that don't exercise wisdom, that clicked on the site with the sketchy name, that opened the direct message from the ex and didn't bother to tell their spouse. Here's what Proverbs 5:7-8 says. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. Unfortunately, many different Christians seem to think that life is about how close to sin can we get without sinning. How close to sin can we get without sinning? And that is not the object of the game. But it's kind of like what people do in bowling, right? How close to the edge? Let me put that spin on it, and I'm going to get it right on the edge, and then it'll come back, and it'll be awesome, and people will go, wow, you're a good bowler. But even the pros can have a tendency to get over on the edge, and it doesn't stay on the edge. It goes into the gutter, right? And I've known way too many Christians, way too many pastors that didn't take this advice, didn't establish good bumpers, didn't maintain those bumpers. And their life went into the gutter. Their marriage went into the gutter. Some of them went a lot farther than that. Down the drain, down the toilet. Ugly. And wisdom says use bumpers. Don't even go near. Stay far from that. So let me ask you, what are some bumpers that you've placed in your life? What are some bumpers, especially if you're married, what are some bumpers that wisdom would say, this is good to have in place? Let me tell you some of the bumpers that we have decided that are best for our marriage. And again, this is what we've decided. I'm not saying this is what everybody should do. I'm just saying this is what we have decided what's best for us. We've decided what's best for us is that I don't meet with women alone that aren't old enough to be my mother. If they're old enough to be my mother, then we consider that okay. But younger than that, I'm not alone with a woman. Same thing, she's not going to be alone with a man unless they're old enough to be her father. That's just what we've decided. Just to help protect us, protect our marriage, to help one another feel more comfortable, have more confident, all of that, so that there's not even the appearance of evil, something that so we're not getting an idea or the other person's not getting an idea, just to keep everything on the up and up. Not that anything would happen, should happen, but just in case. We believe there's wisdom in that. For us, that's what we've decided. We've also decided, like, if I get a text from a female, I let her know about it. She has access to my phone. I have access to her phone. She knows my passcode. I know her passcode. In fact, it's the same passcode. She has access to my email. I have access to her email. My name's on her Facebook account. Her name's on my Facebook account. So there's there's an understanding. We're together. If I get a direct message, a private message, she's aware of that. If she gets one, I'm aware of that. Like, isn't that overboard? I don't know if that's overboard or not. We feel like that's bumpers. We feel like that's wisdom for us. Again, that's for us. You have to decide what works best for you in your situation. And some of you, like, you know what? Well, I'm not married. I still think there's wisdom in bumpers. Okay? I still think there's wisdom in bumpers, in figuring out what that looks like in your situation. Okay? With that said, I think there's wisdom even if you're not married. There's application in these things, I think, for all people. Yes, specifically for marriage, but I think there's application in every life situation. Here's one more. Keep cultivating. Keep cultivating. Keep cultivating. Solomon doesn't just tell us not to go where the homewreckers are, to use bumpers, to guard our hearts. But he tells us to keep cultivating. Proverbs 12:11 says this: whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. Now, this isn't a Proverbs particularly speaking about marriage, but I think it's more than applicable in marriage. I think whoever works his land, whoever cultivates the relationship, is going to find plenty of bread. Like, there's a lot of great stuff you're going to be provided for. You're going to find it enjoyable. But you've got to cultivate. You've got to work at the relationship. Many of you have realized this, right? Marriage is work. Marriage is work. But if you want a healthy, God-honoring marriage, it is the work, and we've got to do the work. We have to be intentional about putting in the work. And here's some different suggestions, kind of make this practical. I think first, or not necessarily in order, but we can apply this physically, like with a massage. You think of cultivating the land, you think of giving a massage to the shoulders or to the feet. Not as often as I probably should, but one of the things that I try to do, at least occasionally, is to get a bucket and put some warm water in there and let my wife soak her feet and then rub her feet, maybe kind of wash her feet, and just help her relax. That's something that that I have found helps her to relax, and a way to cultivate our marriage relationship is for me to serve her by getting a tub of water so that she can soak her feet. She can just sit down because she spends a lot of time on her feet serving our family. Like, you just take a break, sit down, put your feet in the water, and relax. And I'll even give you a little massage, rub your feet for you, wash them with some soap, maybe even put some lotion on it. But you got to be intentional. Got to work for the marriage. Another thing, date night or meeting for lunch. And I realize, depending on where you're at with children and different things, jobs and so forth, some of this can be a challenge. But again, that's where you be intentional. You're going to cultivate the marriage relationship. We've got to be intentional and put things on the calendar. Things won't happen by accident. The things that happen by accident are accidents. It's usually not a good thing, right? So be intentional. Carve out time in your calendar to spend time together, whether it's for lunch, whether it's in the evening. You figure out what works best for you and your schedules, but create time to be with one another. Here's another idea. Write a poem or a list of things you appreciate about them. Again, you're cultivating. Buy them something. Keep cultivating. Again, there's some overlap in these things, but keep cultivating. Finally, I'm going to end with this. Build on Jesus. Build on Jesus. It's not in the Proverbs, but build on Jesus. I want you to think of a triangle. I'm not going to draw this illustration out, but I want you to think of a triangle, okay? And so on the bottom of the triangle is on one side is you, on the other side of the triangle is your spouse, at the top of the triangle is God. If you think about a marriage relationship and like, how do I get closer to my spouse? Well, I've talked about some things that will help with that. But one of the best things, if not the best thing, that I can tell you today for your marriage is you focus on getting closer to God. And if they're focusing on getting closer to God, guess what's going to happen? The closer you get to God and the closer they get to God, the closer you're going to get to one another. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. If you're pursuing God with all your heart and they're pursuing God with all their heart, guaranteed your marriage will be better. Guaranteed you will be closer. You will be more fulfilled in your relationship if you're both seeking after the Lord. I also want to share this. Totally realize some of you are going, Pastor Len, this would have been great 20 years ago. This would have been great 2 months ago. Why didn't you tell us that then? I'm sorry. But here's the deal. Build on Jesus. Where you're at is where you're at. Build from there. 5 great things, in my opinion, that we can learn from the book of Proverbs, that we can put into our lives, that we can build healthy, godly marriages from. Start building now. Start building now. Put these into practice now. Don't take a lot of time regretting the past. Learn from the past and move on. And let's have better marriages next year than we have today. Let's have better marriages next week than we have today. Amen? Here's the deal. Guess what? You're going to get out early today. And it's some time that spouses, maybe it's some time for you to spend together. Okay? But we are going to sing the Lord and worship the Lord before I let you go. You do me a favor and close your eyes and bow your heads.